Hello, everyone. My name is Crystal Aris Biseda from Section A, and I will be reporting on the advantages of radio, a continuation of our report on Module 8, the limitations and advantages of radio. By this time, you may have watched my fellow classmates' report on what is radio and its limitations. Now, we will delve into the advantages of radio as a communication medium. Okay, let's start with number one. Radio stimulates the imagination. Radio's weakness could be the source of its strengths. The most obvious of this is radio's appeal to the imagination. Radio listeners must create their own mental images of what they're hearing. Radio involves the imagination in a different manner. While the other media make use of sight, radio's pictures are suggested by the sound of voices and sound effects. The fact that nothing can be seen on radio means that the demands which it makes upon the imagination are much greater than those made by the visual media. There is a greater sense of liveliness in the visualization stimulated by radio than that stimulated by literature. Unlike in television, where pictures are limited by the size of the screen, radio's pictures are any size by the listener's care to make them. In the visual media, there is a general tendency towards the factual. The character in a play may be a fictional, but he or she is still physically and visibly real. In radio, as in books, there is a general tendency towards the fictional. Even if the announcer is an actual person, we know him or her on radio only by picturing or imagining him or her. In a sense, he or she is a fiction. The way that he is pictured in the listener's mind is quite unlike what he or she really is. Our image of the radio announcer is to a certain extent determined by the limits set by language and sounds. Radio is intimate and personal. While radio is a long distance mode of communication, it is also paradoxically an inward and intimate medium. Real voices, insinuating personalities and emotions, are passed on through radio. Warmth, compassion, anger, pain, and laughter are conveyed better in an oral medium. With accent, inflection, hesitation, pauses, and a variety of emphasis and speeds, the voice report is able to convey much more than the printed speech. In the sense, radio becomes a personal medium, more personal than publications. That radio often reaches listeners in their solitude and privacy adds to the intimate character of radio. Number two, radio appeals to disadvantaged groups. The portability and the inexpensiveness of radio make it affordable to the common people, including economically disadvantaged groups. This makes radio a natural medium for farmers, fishermen, and rural audiences. Those who have little access to newspapers can get news and information through radio. The less educated and those who have difficulty with or aversion to reading are easily attracted to radio. Number three, radio overcomes geographical and physical barriers. Radio reaches listeners wherever they are, whether sea, mountain, or bus, with news of a terrorist attack on New York or an advertisement of an egg show in Manila, for instance. As purveyor of news and information, neither television nor newspaper can match radio in terms of immediacy and far reach. Radio requires no processing of film, no waiting for the presses. Books and magazines can be stopped at national frontiers or by floods and landslides. Radio signals clear country boundaries and cross oceans. Radio can bring together those separated by geography, culture, learning, or status. Number four, radio gets messages to the listeners instantly. The words spoken by an announcer in a radio studio are sent to thousands of listeners almost instantly or fairly quickly. This makes it ideal for conveying urgent news such as the occurrence of a calamity or disaster or the need for assistance. Radio also caters to a wide variety of listeners and communities of listeners and their special interests. For example, there are radio programs for farmers through which the availability of piglets or rambutan seedlings in Mount Pedro's farm are made known. Such items are too numerous and trivial for big networks and newspapers to advertise. They are, however, vital to small communities and can be publicized much more cheaply and quickly through radio, particularly when low power localized radio is applied. If knowledge is power, radio gives power to all, whether they exercise authority or not. Number 5, radio's messages are tailored for the listeners. The other quality of radio that separates it from the printed media is that radio materials have previously been selected. The radio presenter selects exactly what is to be received by his or her consumer. In print, a large number of news stories, articles, and features are set out across several pages. Each one is headlined or identified. Readers scan the pages, choosing to read only those items which interest them. With radio, the selection process takes place during program planning. The listener is presented with a single thread of material. Number 6, radio has music. Music on radio can serve as a background or can be the focus of total absorption. Music relaxes, induces pleasure, nostalgia, excitement, or curiosity. While television can offer additional visuals to enhance music understanding and entertainment, radio controls the oral empire. And number 7, last but not the least, radio is an entertainment medium. As we try to understand radio as a means for reaching the masses with solid developmental messages, a reality in the Philippine setting is that listeners take radio more as a means of entertainment and arguably less as a source of education. The commercial-oriented media trying to compete for size of audience have conditioned the minds of listeners to seek entertainment. These advertiser-driven programs employ attention-getting devices and gimmickry in order to draw the audience to their station. Therefore, those who look to radio to serve development and education need to design enjoyable and stimulating programs. And that's it for the advantages of radio. Thank you very much for listening to my report. The next topic will be discussed by my fellow reporter. Thank you and see you in our next report.